You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with the NFL, specifically the Giants beating Washington 23-20. They get their second win of the season. And I'll tell you, as a Jets fan, I'm happy. I hate the Giants. I usually root against them, but I was happy they won. A, I picked them in my pool. B, the Jets now have less competition for the first overall pick, so the Giants with 2 wins means that the Jets can go 1-15 and still get the first overall pick. As it stands right now, the only 2 teams with 1 win or less are the Jets and Jaguars. The Jets are 0-8. The Jaguars are 1-7. It seems like they're going to have the first 2 picks. In what order remains to be seen, but I'll tell you, the way the Jaguars played yesterday, playing the Texans close, Texans only won by 2, Jake Luton actually looking pretty good, threw for over 300 yards, had 2 touchdowns, James Robinson played well, DJ Chark played well. It seems like the Jaguars can get a second win. The Jets aren't going to get 2 wins. So if the Jets can go 1-15 and still get the first overall pick, fantastic. They avoid the dubious distinction of being a winless team. But back to the Giants game. The reason I really want to talk about this is because of the Kyle Allen injury. Really, really bad dislocation. He also had a fracture. It was a scary injury. I mean, it was Theismann-esque. It was Alex Smith-esque. I don't know what's going on with Washington and their quarterbacks getting leg injuries, but something's going on there. Alex Smith came in and somehow almost won that game. I mean, if Smith had been more careful with the football on that 2-minute drive at the end of the game, it's possible that Washington wins. I mean, Smith did throw for over 300 yards. The Giants' defense played great. They forced 5 turnovers, 3 picks, 2 fumbles. And Daniel Jones looked really good. Jones didn't turn the ball over once. That's the first game this season that he hasn't turned the ball over. He did fumble it twice, but the Giants recovered both those fumbles. So, baby steps. But it's going to be interesting to see how different the Washington offense looks with Alex Smith back under center. I mean, it's a great story. The terrible injury led to 17 surgeries. Smith nearly died because he got sepsis. He almost lost his leg. He almost never played football again, but give him credit, alright? He worked his way back, and now he's going to be the starting quarterback for Washington again. That's really, really impressive. That's the kind of thing that Hollywood blockbusters are made out of. But I do want to go back to the Giants for a little bit. Most of the reaction after the win was, we got the win, that's nice, we're still fighting for the NFC East title, but we're still a bad team. The only team that we've beaten so far is Washington. I mean, one thing that you have to realize, the Giants are still in last place in the NFC East. But there were some people saying that this was a little bit of a vindication of Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman. Judge, because Golden Tate doesn't make the flight with the team. He's being disciplined because he acted like an idiot. Said some things he shouldn't have. Hasn't been putting it all out on the field. I mean, I give Judge credit for disciplining Tate, and Austin Mack came in and looked really good. He had 4 catches for 72 yards. That's really good. And the defense showed up yesterday for the Giants. Logan Ryan had a big interception. Jabril Peppers had a big interception and a fumble recovery. Blake Martinez had an interception. Kyler Fackrell made some plays. Leonard Williams made some plays. I've heard some people say that this is a vindication of what the Giants are doing. It's not. It's a good win. Alright, you got the win. You're still in the thick of it for the NFC East title. But you still stink. You're still in last place. You want to really impress me? Go out there next week and beat the Eagles. Go out there 2 weeks later, because you're on bye, week 11, and beat the Bengals. Beat a team other than Washington. If all you have to point to is 2 wins against the Washington football team, you're not a good team. Again, you got the win. Solid win. Defense showed up. Jones looked good. Made some really good throws. But you're still not a good team. Now, one thing that one of my friends said to me actually had to make me think. He said, you know what, Jacob? Last year, you praised Adam Gase for laying the hammer down on guys like Jamal Adams and Le'Veon Bell and people like that. You said there's no one on the Jets that isn't replaceable. Why aren't you giving the Giants the same time of day? And it's a fair point. In the past, I have praised Adam Gase for being a strict disciplinarian. I didn't think the Jets needed Jamal Adams. I didn't think the Jets needed Le'Veon Bell. This is going back to before the season started. This is like last year. Like, you can go back to my Jets off-season preview, where I said all these things. But at the end of the day, it's different. Adam Gase, last year with the Jets, went 7-9. The Giants right now are 2-7. What are the odds that they finish this season by going 5-2 in their last 7? I mean, let's look at the schedule. Let's say you beat the Eagles and you beat the Bengals. 4-7. You've got the Seahawks, Cardinals, Browns, Ravens, and Cowboys. You know how many games you're winning out of those 5? 1. You'll beat the Cowboys. That's it. You had other winnable games. Go out there and beat the Cowboys in Dallas. Go out there and don't allow a late 2-minute drill to Carson Wentz. Go out there and beat Tom Brady. I understand what Joe Judge is trying to do. He's trying to build a culture of discipline. Play the game the right way, show up, do your job. It's very Bill Belichick-like. Which is fitting because Judge came from the Patriots. But at the end of the day, what do the Giants have to show for it? They're 2-7 right now. Best case scenario, they're going 5-11. There's a big difference between 5-11 and 7-9. Teams have made the playoffs with 7-9 records. No team that has finished with double-digit losses has made the playoffs. Can that change this year? The way the NFC East is going? Yes, it can. I understand what Judge is trying to do. It's the right thing. But at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. You have to win. You have to go out there and beat teams other than Washington. Like I said, go out there and beat the Eagles. Beat the Bengals. You want me to really believe in this current regime? Beat both of them. Not just one. Not a close loss to the other one. Beat them both. If you're as good as some Giants fans are making you out to be, Daniel Jones, I'm speaking to you. Evan Ingram, I'm speaking to you. Joe Judge, I'm speaking to you. Dave Gettleman, I'm speaking to you. Go out there and beat the Eagles and then the Bengals. It shouldn't be that hard for you. If you're really a good team, you should win those games pretty easily. I do want to talk about Dolphins-Cardinals because this game featured two of the members of this next group of quarterbacks that are coming into the NFL. We're really witnessing a changing of the guard in the NFL. Guys like Breeze, Brady, Rodgers, guys like that, they've had their time. Are they still producing? Yes, for the most part. I'll get into the Sunday night game a little later, but for the most part, they're all producing. But they don't have that much left in the tank. The future of the NFL is going to be led by guys like Tua and Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Josh Allen, too. Baker Mayfield as well. So it was really nice to see Dolphins-Cardinals turn into a shootout. Both quarterbacks played great. Tua went 20 for 28 for 248 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chan Gailey expanded the offense. He got Devontae Parker involved, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, Jakeem Grant. And Tua did all this without the services of Myles Gaskin and Matt Breida. Jordan Howard got the most carries out of any Dolphin yesterday. He had 10 carries for only 19 yards and a touchdown. Now, most of those runs were just straight up the middle dives. But you've still got to do better than that. The guy who I was really impressed with was Salvon Ahmed. He had 7 carries for 38 yards. That's just under 5.5 yards per carry. That's pretty good. Kyler Murray played well, 283 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. He had 11 carries also for 106 yards. Chase Edmonds played well, Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald. DeAndre Hopkins didn't get involved as much as I thought he would. I think that's a big reason why the Cardinals lost. I mean, give the Dolphins credit. They're 5-3 right now. Last year, when they were tanking for Tua, they went 5-11. It kills me to say this, but they're really headed in the right direction. Brian Flores has done a great job with this team. So is Chris Greer. They're set. The Cardinals are too. I mean, yeah, this was a bad loss. You got outscored 10-0 in the fourth quarter. But no other team in the NFC West won. The Rams were on bye. The Niners got destroyed by the Packers on Thursday night. And the Seahawks lost in another shootout to the Bills, 44-34. So this is just more evidence that what the Cardinals did worked. I was skeptical of it, but you know what? Kyler Murray has turned into a really good quarterback. I'm not 100% sold on Cliff Kingsbury, but if you want to tell me that Kyler Murray's a system quarterback, I'd listen to you. The Dolphins and Cardinals are set for the next 10 to 15 years. They really are. I'll touch on Steelers Cowboys. Obviously closer than it should have been. The Cowboys started their fourth string quarterback yesterday, Garrett Gilbert. Ben DiNucci was so bad, he only gets one start, and then they go to Garrett freaking Gilbert. I mean, the thing is, Gilbert wasn't awful. Went 21 for 38, had 243 passing yards. He did throw a touchdown to CeeDee Lamb. He also threw an interception, but Gilbert wasn't awful. I'll give him credit. And there's a big issue in Dallas. It's an issue that no one's talking about. We all know they need Prescott back. We all know that defense needs a major upgrade. But what are they going to do at running back? Ezekiel Elliott has been dreadful in the past 4 games. He hasn't rushed for over 65 yards since the Giants game. Hasn't had a touchdown since the Giants game. This is a guy who the Cowboys really needed to step up. And he's fallen flat. I mean, this is a guy who just 14 months ago signed a mammoth contract extension. 6 years, $90 million. He's making $10.9 million this year. The year after, he's going to make $13.7. The Cowboys are in cap hell. And Tony Pollard, a cheaper option, looked much better yesterday. 9 carries for 57 yards? Some people have said that Pollard is better than Elliott. He's not. But one thing that I'll say is this does give a ton of credence to the people saying never pay a running back. And you can throw Le'Veon Bell in there also. I mean, look, if you have a star running back, you have to keep him. There are bad running backs in this league. If you have a great offensive line, can you get solid production from a bad running back? The answer is yes. And the flip side of that coin works too. Great running back, bad offensive line, you'll get bad production. I mean, people say just invest in the offensive line and go from there. And I'm not saying don't invest in the offensive line. For the love of God, do. But if you have a great running back, you have to pay him. What do you say? Thank you for the 1,000-yard seasons? Thank you for the Pro Bowls? But now we're not going to pay you? What more do you want him to do? If your point is the running back doesn't matter, just throw it every play. I understand that Ezekiel Elliott has disappointed recently, but I'll take him on the Jets in a heartbeat. I understand the logic of the don't pay running backs community, and there are some running backs that really shouldn't get paid. Le'Veon Bell, I was never crazy about that contract. The guy had missed a year of football, and it showed. But again, you have to adequately compensate greatness. If you have a great running back, you have to pay him. You just do. What, are the Giants going to let Saquon Barkley walk? Do you have any idea how much money Saquon Barkley would get in the open market? This is a guy who opened up his NFL career with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. In 2019, he had 1,003 rushing yards, despite missing 3 games. That's incredible. What, are the Raiders not going to pay Josh Jacobs? That's ridiculous. There are some guys that you need to pay at running back. Some guys you don't. It's not a position that you throw money at blindly. But there are some guys that are worth a big contract. Alright, now I have to talk about Saints Buccaneers. I sat down last night expecting to watch a great game. Drew Brees versus Tom Brady. 2 of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. If you wanted to put them both on your Mount Rushmore for quarterbacks, I wouldn't be upset at it. But I'll tell you, I have no idea what happened with the Buccaneers yesterday. That was an evisceration of Tom Brady, the likes of which I've never seen before. Here's how bad it was. There were 3 quarterbacks yesterday. Drew Brees, Taysom Hill, and Jameis Winston, who, even if you doubled Tom Brady's quarterback rating, he had a QBR of 40.4, so if you double it, you get 80.8. He still doesn't get past Brees, Hill, and Winston. The Buccaneers defense couldn't stop Brees to save their lives. Todd Bowles, most overrated supposed defensive mind in the NFL. He's worse than Greg Williams by a mile. Not even close. Here's how bad the Buccaneers defense was yesterday. Taysom Hill, as he was running with the ball, did a pump fake to Drew Brees, who was lined up at wide receiver. The Buccaneers fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. It led to a big run by Hill. You cannot allow Taysom Hill to be the Saints' leading rusher. He had 7 carries for 54 yards. 12 different Saints had a catch yesterday. That's got to be a record. I have no idea if it is, but that's got to be some kind of record. The Saints swept the Buccaneers. Tom Brady has never been swept in the regular season by a division rival before. I mean, this is huge. This puts the Saints a half game up on the Buccaneers. They'll have the tiebreaker. There were people saying at the beginning of the season that Drew Brees is past his prime, forget about it, the Saints aren't going to get very far with him. Look, I was skeptical too, but I'll tell you, since the Raiders game, he's looked really good. He had a little bit of a hiccup against the Chargers, but he's been fantastic. Other than that, I mean, the flip side of that coin is, what does this mean for Tom Brady? Brady versus Belichick, all that stuff. Maybe it's just Brady can't beat the Saints. Maybe it's just that simple. Whatever Dennis Allen is doing, it seems to be working. I wouldn't read too much into this in totality. I mean, look, it's a fantastic win for the Saints. Terrible loss for the Buccaneers. Like I said, Todd Bowles is incredibly overrated. When you want his defense to show up, it doesn't. But overall, the Buccaneers will be fine. Hopefully, for their sake, they won't go up against the Saints in the playoffs. Alright, now I'll give you some Valk talk about college football. This would be the time that I'd preview the Monday night game, but it's Patriots-Jets. I've talked about both teams before. The dynasty is dead. Thank God. I think what's best for the Patriots going forward is for Robert Kraft to say to Bill Belichick, you had a great run, but it's time to let someone else take over. Let someone else usher in this new era of Patriots football. As for the Jets, they're the worst team in the NFL. I read something from Rich Cimini of ESPN that said that the Jets aren't going to fire Joe Douglas. Look, I know he's on a 6-year deal, but if he goes 0-16, how do you keep him? I know this is year 2 of that deal. I get it. But with Woody Johnson coming back, there's got to be some hope, right? So look, I'm not going to go too in-depth on that game now. I'll do it tomorrow. I got to talk about college football. And I'll start with the game of the week. A game that I nailed. Notre Dame was the underdog. Even though they were in South Bend. A lot of people were picking Clemson. Even though Trevor Lawrence was out. For some strange reason. I mean, the guy was well enough to be on the sidelines and to talk to teammates without his mask on. If he's not well enough to play, don't have him on the sidelines. That is a joke. And the fans running out onto the field after the Notre Dame win. Oh my God. This is exactly what I was saying as I saw that. Oh, that's not wise. That's not wise. That's not wise. Oh, that's not wise. In a coronavirus-free world, which it seems like we're getting to that point, Pfizer, with its vaccine, announced a 90% efficacy rate. So, hey, we're on the right track. In a coronavirus-free world, I have no problem with the fans running onto the field after a big win. It's a great scene. But with the coronavirus being a thing, how do you do that? Hopefully we don't see in the news big coronavirus outbreak at Notre Dame. But onto the game itself. I was critical of what DJ Uiagalelei did against Boston College. Yes, he led him to the come-from-behind win, but they were down for most of that game. It never should have gotten to that point. Trevor Lawrence, it would have been a rout. But I'll give DJ credit. With the lights on bright, the entire sports world watching, in a game that can make or break Clemson's CFP hopes, he played really well. Went 29 for 44, threw for 439 yards, had 2 touchdowns, ran for another one. It was a sensational performance in a game where Notre Dame stifled Travis Etienne. DJ got Cornell Powell and Amari Rogers involved. They each had over 130 receiving yards. Etienne got his in the receiving game. 8 catches for 57 yards. Braden Galloway had 3 catches for 46 yards. It was a good game by DJ, but it wasn't enough. And this is what makes Trevor Lawrence so great. You can't tell me that with Trevor Lawrence starting instead of Uiagalelei, that Clemson wouldn't have won this game. Lawrence is better. There's a reason Lawrence is starting. I think it's fair to say that Lawrence would have had one more touchdown drive. He would have scored in double overtime. By the way, again, I love the college football overtime. Clemson may not have been down at the half. That's a knock on DJ to me. Then he needs to keep leading the Tigers back to come from behind victories. Against Notre Dame, it's acceptable. Against Boston College, it isn't. Matt Ryan isn't there anymore. I saw on Twitter people saying that this means that Trevor Lawrence is a system quarterback because DJ played really well. Are you joking? They got the loss. That's all that matters. Okay, fine. They beat Boston College. Congratulations. When you're evaluating college prospects, the quality of the win means something. In the NFL, it doesn't. In college football, it does. At the end of the day, DJ may have just sunk the Tigers' CFP hopes. I know that Clemson is 4th right now. But we've got a lot of undefeated teams. Cincinnati, BYU, Indiana's playing great. Who saw that coming? What about a school like Coastal Carolina, or Marshall, or Liberty? Nothing ticks me off more than seeing undefeated teams not be rewarded for their seasons. It drove me nuts with Boise State. It drove me nuts with UCF. I hope it doesn't happen this year. And when you look at Notre Dame, their offense showed up in every facet. Ian Book had a great game. Wouldn't surprise me if he was a late day 2, early day 3 pick. Kyron Williams had the best game I've ever seen him have. Javon McKinley played really well. Avery Davis played really well. Michael Mayer, the tight end, played really well. This was a big win for Notre Dame. I don't like Notre Dame. It killed me to pick them. Every year they're massively overrated. Well, this year they're the real deal. And they're doing it all against ACC competition. That's really impressive. Okay, fine, they had the throwaway game against USF. But they beat Duke, FSU, Louisville, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, and now Clemson. That's ACC competition. It's not exactly the cream of the crop of the ACC, but still. Notre Dame is usually an independent. The fact that they're beating everyone in the ACC is impressive. I'm going to be very interested in how they do against a solid team like Boston College, a solid team in North Carolina, forget Syracuse, they're a joke, and a solid team in Wake Forest. If they can go undefeated, that's impressive. And the referees in that game were some of the worst I've ever seen. I understand wanting to get the call right, but there comes a point where you just have to say enough's enough and we're not going to review every play. That's not what instant replay is there for. It's not to review these ticky-tacky, bang-bang plays. It's for the obvious mistakes. Oh my God, you have a camera angle that's naked to the human eye that shows that the runner was a millimeter shy of the end zone. That's not what instant replay is there for. I'm not getting on these referees in general. They're just doing their job. This is what's expected of them, to get the call right, to double check and triple check. But again, there comes a point where you just have to say enough is enough. We're going to let these guys play. Quite honestly, we've got to amend the rules so that there aren't that many replays. And that replay is limited in its scope. If it's a millimeter short, and the call on the field is a first down or a touchdown, that's not what the rule is there for. I understand wanting to get the call right, but you slow the game down, momentum ceases to exist. It's turned into a joke. It really has. Moving on now to BYU versus Boise State. Zach Wilson showing up in a big game. I understand Friday night, maybe there weren't a whole hell of a lot of people watching. They may have went to bed early to get ready for the Saturday games, but for those of us who watched it, and I did, this was Wilson showing why he's viewed as a first rounder. He dissected the Broncos defense. Gunnar Romney had a fantastic game. 6 catches for 133 yards. So did Dax Milne, Neil Pau'u, and Isaac Rex caught 2 touchdowns. I thought Wilson did a fantastic job. Tyler Algier had a really good game. Lopini Katoa had a good game. At the end of the day, Boise State didn't have much of a chance in this game. Jack Sears only threw 4 passes, so it was up to Cade Fennegan. Maybe Fennegan can turn into a solid quarterback, but you can't put him in that spot against BYU and expect him to win. This was a very convincing win by the Cougars. Again, if they keep this up, I understand the quality of competition isn't the best. They have North Alabama on the 21st and San Diego State on December 12th. I get it's not the cream of the crop of the nation, but if they go undefeated, I think they should be rewarded. Moving on now to Michigan versus Indiana, and I've made up my mind. I don't want Jim Harbaugh, okay? Final answer, I'm done. I don't care what happens the rest of the way. I don't care if Michigan wins out, they beat OSU, they win their bowl game, whatever. It's done. I don't want Jim Harbaugh as the next head coach of the Jets. This guy for whatever reason, just doesn't have it anymore. As good as Indiana is, and they're a really good team, surprised the daylights out of me, you can't lose to them if you're Michigan. You cannot have your quarterback in Joe Milton complete just 18 of his 34 passes. Look, his wide receivers didn't help him. There were a lot of drops there, but you still have to get more than 21 points. Indiana does not have a great defense. They have a solid defense. It's 45th in the nation. They've allowed 25.7 points per game. That's not bad, but it's not great. If Jim Harbaugh is as good as we're all making him out to be, he'd find a way to beat Indiana. He'd find a way to have his team score more than 21 points. And Don Brown is inept. Don Brown is a terrible defensive coordinator. I like Michael Penix. I think he's a really good quarterback. I thought Stevie Scott had a fantastic game. Some people got on me when I said that Scott was a good running back. That's why. But you can't lose to Indiana if you're Michigan. It's a team you're expected to beat. The expectations when you are a Wolverine or a Wolverines coach is really, really high. I mean, like I said on Friday, Jim Harbaugh has never finished with less than 3 wins since he went back to Michigan. He's already at 2. They have Wisconsin on Saturday. That's a loss. We're at 3 right there. They'll beat Rutgers. They'll beat Penn State. Maryland, they should be able to beat. But they can't beat OSU. That's 4. Maybe 5, depending on how you feel about Maryland. I don't want that guy as my head coach. I just don't. There are better options out there than Jim Harbaugh. I don't care what he did with the Niners. That's almost a decade ago. Do you realize that? The NFL has changed. Football has changed. Jim Harbaugh hasn't kept up with it. As a person, I like Harbaugh. He seems like a really nice guy. Fantastic football mind, but it just doesn't translate to being a successful head coach anymore. It's done. It's over. My final answer is, I don't want Jim Harbaugh as the next head coach of the Jets. Moving on now to Florida, Georgia. And, again, another game that I nailed. Georgia's another one of those teams that I think is a little overrated. This is a Georgia team that we hyped up as having a great defense. Yet when they go up against potent offenses like Alabama and Florida, they give up over 40 points. Yes, they destroyed Auburn. Okay, that was an impressive win. But Tennessee isn't that good. At the time they were viewed as good. We now know that was a mistake. Tim Couch isn't the quarterback at Kentucky anymore. And again, against Alabama and Florida, better teams, they lay an egg. You can't give up over 40 points if you're going to be a defense-first team. I like Kirby Smart. I don't think this is a bad Georgia team. They're 12th in the nation right now. I think that's very fair. But at the end of the day, they're not this defensive juggernaut that we all thought they were after they trounced Auburn. I mean, some of the credit does go to Kyle Trask. I like Trask a lot. On Saturday, he threw the second most passing yards ever by a Gators quarterback behind just Tim Tebow. Trask had 474 passing yards. He threw for 4 touchdowns. Georgia did a good job of stifling Dameon Pierce and Malik Davis. They just couldn't stop Trask. The thing that Trask did that really impressed me was even though Malik Davis couldn't get anything going on the ground, he got Davis involved in the passing game. He had 5 catches for 100 yards. Kyle Pitts showed why he's one of the best tight ends in the nation. He had a really impressive touchdown catch. You want to tell me I'm too hard on Georgia here because Stetson Bennett got hurt? And even when he played on Saturday, he wasn't that good, and DeJuan Mathis laid an egg? I understand that the Georgia defense didn't get much support from the offense. Except the one thing I'll say is Zamir White should have had more than 7 carries. I understand you're down, but you've got to get him involved. He's your best player on offense. I understand that the offense didn't help the Bulldogs defense, but you can't allow over 470 passing yards. You can't allow 44 points. Again, this isn't a bad Bulldogs team, but it's not a great Bulldogs team. They're susceptible to high-powered offenses. Exactly what I said on Friday. Alright, now I'll give you some baseball Valk talk. Specifically, Steve Cohen endearing himself to Mets fans immediately. He fired Brodie Van Wagenen and seemingly everyone else in that front office. Omar Minaya is gone. Allard Baird's gone. Adam Guttridge is gone. Jared Banner's gone. The second that Cohen took over as Mets owner, him and Sandy Alderson hit the ground running. They didn't waste any time. It's a good move for the Mets. Van Wagenen did an absolutely terrible job as Mets GM. He's a snake oil salesman. It makes him a fantastic agent, but not a GM. The Diaz and Cano trade, I understand that they had good years last year, but you've got to make the playoffs. They haven't done that. Marcus Stroman, there's a chance he leaves the Mets after only pitching 11 games for him. And realize, the Mets gave up a pretty big haul to get him. Anthony Kay and Simeon Woods Richardson. 2 pretty highly thought of prospects. He trusted Carlos Beltran. He didn't even get a chance to manage the team. He's a joke. He's an absolute joke. Fantastic salesman. It's what makes him a great agent. But it's the right thing by Cohen and Alderson to clean house. I'm not crazy about Sandy Alderson. I wasn't crazy about the job he did as Mets GM. I understand 2015. The big Cespedes trade and bringing him back were strokes of genius at the time. But he let Justin Turner walk. Didn't do a good job in identifying prospects that the Mets could use going forward when he traded guys like Jay Bruce, Lucas Duda, Addison Reed. Neil Walker, Curtis Granderson, guys like that. It's the right decision to get rid of Van Wagenen and the guys that he brought in. But I don't think Alderson is the right guy for this job going forward. Having said that, though, this does signal that Steve Cohen's going to be very aggressive. The Mets are going to be involved in trade discussions and big free agents, and they're going to get some. I promise you, the Mets are going to make at least one, probably two, big splashes this offseason. Speaking of the offseason, the first salvo has been fired. The Blue Jays re-signed Robbie Ray to a one-year deal worth $8 million. And I gotta tell you, I like this move. Ray has a track record of success. He's a guy who hovers around 500, sometimes a little higher. He made the All-Star team in 2017. He's a lefty. Good pitcher. Last year, he laid an egg. Went 2-5 with a 6.62 ERA. Now, he wasn't awful for the Blue Jays. Went 1-1 with a 4.79 ERA. And in Game 1 of the wild card round against the Rays, Ray was solid. Went 3 innings, only gave up 1 run. When you first look at his stats for last year, they jump out as dreadful. Overall, he went 2-5 with a 6.62 ERA. But again, 60-game farce, track record of success, wasn't bad for the Blue Jays. $8 million is fair for him. It may be a tad high, but I don't hate it. This is a good move for the Blue Jays. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying I'll have a pie a la mode with ice cream.